Hi, welcome to the Psych Diaries. My name's Ro. I'm a psychologist from Sydney, Australia. Welcome to my office today. So this is going to be a new multi-part series on my channel. For those who have heard this intro before, feel free to skip ahead. But for everyone new, basically I realized that I talk a lot about psychology adjacent type topics, so like careers, the science behind certain mental health disorders, and I realized that I previously had shied away from talking about specific therapeutic techniques because I was worried that it wasn't tailored to the individual. Usually when I teach these techniques, I've got a pretty good background on the person and we've been working together for a little while, and so I can really tailor what I talk about to suit the person. But recently I saw a TikTok by someone called Maddie Westbrook. I'll link the little YouTube thing below. They were talking about how they wish someone had taught them how to cope with emotions at school. And it just, for a second, it was kind of like, wait, that's my job. That's really what I do with 90% of my time. I talk to kids, adults, families, groups about how to cope with emotion. A lot of people don't have access to psychological services. There are probably many barriers to access. And at the very least, I can give you a research-backed skill. This is not a substitute for therapy. However, I'm gonna talk about some of the common therapeutic approaches. These skills might be useful as just life skills. And I always peg the things that I talk about in therapy as being life skills, like how to cope with emotions, how to identify our thoughts, how to change our behaviors to take us towards the type of person that we want to be. So psychologists use a wide array of therapies that kind of tackle the core issue of psychological distress. Throughout this series, I'm going to touch on all different types of aspects of things that I share with clients. But for today, we're going to start with Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, also known as CBT. This is probably the most popular, well-known form of therapy. Usually it's a bit more of like a short-term approach. It's a bit easier to apply maybe at home. Some forms of therapy, like psychodynamic therapy, really rely on the therapeutic relationship. You can't do psychodynamic therapy by yourself. And so I'm going to start with one where most people will be able to grasp the concepts and be able to start doing some of these exercises at home. So the core of cognitive behavioral therapy talks about this idea of a cognitive triad or triangle. Basically, situations happen to us and then we have certain thoughts. Those thoughts lead to certain feelings and those feelings lead to certain behaviors, and often those behaviors reinforce the thoughts. And so we get into this little pattern, or we get into this little loop. Cognitive behavioral therapy is all about breaking loops or changing loops so that we can change how we feel. An example of this is if someone's anxious about spiders. So the situation is they see a spider, their thought is this spider is going to hurt me, it's dangerous. Their feeling is anxiety. When we feel anxious, it's a really natural response, part of the fight, flight or freeze response, to avoid a spider. And so they walk away, they leave the room, they don't look at the spider. However, often that behavior reinforces the thought that the spider is scary because you don't have evidence against that thought. You think back to the last 10 times that you saw a spider, every single time you left before you could really see if the spider was dangerous or not. Today, I'm going to talk about thoughts, and specifically the idea that situations are not inherently good or bad. Situations are often not the thing that we need to change. Often psychological distress is more to do with the meaning we take out of a situation, not the situation itself. And an example of that is if someone loses their job, which, objectively you'd think is like pretty bad or might cause distress, you could have completely different reactions to it. Someone could lose their job, they can feel really sad about it, really disappointed, really let down, embarrassed. The thought underlying that feeling would probably be something along the lines of, I'm not good enough, or people are gonna judge me after this. I'm unemployed now, what does that mean for me? I'm not gonna find another job so soon, what's gonna happen with my finances? However, someone else could be in the exact same situation and their thought could be something different and they could feel happy, elated, relieved. It could be something along the lines of, I finally get to take some time off. I'm so keen for this chance to take a break. I'm gonna go do my own side hustle now. The situation or, whatever happens to us often is not what causes our distress or our emotions. Often it's the way that we perceive it. And so I really wanna become aware or develop a habit of when you start to feel distressing emotions, don't automatically leap to the situation needs to change. Examples include if you're fighting with a friend and you feel upset about it or anxious about it, instead of automatically thinking, I'm going to get rid of the friend, they're just a bad person or something, maybe spending a little bit of time and reflecting on, what do I think about this? How do I view myself? How do I view the other person? How do I view the world? Why is that causing this feeling? Thoughts are tricky, right? Because often they're automatic, they're often unconscious, they pass really quickly, and a lot of people describe having situations happen to them and they immediately feel angry or sad, but they're not quite sure what comes in the middle. So a couple of techniques to try and really get to your thoughts or identify your thoughts is think about yourself as like a cartoon character, and think about if there was a little thought bubble above you at all times narrating the stream of consciousness that is in your head, what would be in that thought bubble? The other thing is catching thoughts when there are simpler or less emotionally evocative events. So for instance, you missed the bus. You feel really disappointed. Why am I disappointed? Is it because, it's going to be late for work, and because I'm going to be late for work, it means that my boss is going to look down on me, and therefore my performance is going to be judged harshly. I'm going to be seen as a failure. And as you can see with that, I'm doing something called downward arrow questioning, or the Socratic questioning, which basically means once you identify something like a thought, asking yourself, why is that causing me distress? Or why is that important? Often I might ask someone, why did you feel so anxious about that test or not getting a perfect mark? It seemed like a fairly small test, you're in year 8. Why is it that it's giving you such a great amount of distress that you can't sleep, you can't eat, or you had a panic attack? And the thought might be, I didn't do well on the test. But then when you question deeper, why is that so important, or why is that so bad? It's, well, if I didn't do well in that test, it's a sign that I'm not good enough to do this level of maths. Why is that a bad thing? Well, actually, it's a sign that maths is not for me. I'm going to fail in maths. Why is that difficult? Well, actually, it's a sign that I'm not good at studying. I'm a failure. I'm going to screw up this test, but I'm also going to screw up lots of tests in the future. Why would that be a bad thing? Because that would mean that I don't get a job, and that would mean that I can't have the career, and that would mean that I don't have the life that I want to lead. And so in that context, we can understand why it causes so much distress, because we're not reacting to the thought of, I didn't do well in this one test. The emotion is actually reacting to the core thought, which is, if I don't do well on this test, I have failed in life. I'm not going to perform well. I'm not going to get the job that I want. I'm not going to lead the life that I want. And it might seem like quite a big thing, or a bit of a catastrophe there. But what often happens is when you have a situation and you notice that you are overreacting, or someone tells you calm down or chill out, there is always a reason for certain types of emotions. We might not be aware of the reason, but often when you dig down, you realize it's actually linked to something way bigger than what we were originally anxious about. I would recommend you use this technique of watching your thinking and trying to catch your thoughts and doing downward arrow. If something happens and you have a very big emotional reaction to it and you don't really understand why, it's to try and catch your thinking, try and dig down to what the core fear is or the core thought is, and then put it down and to write that thought down. If we were doing this in a therapeutic sense, so this might actually take a week or two depending on how insightful the person is. One of their homework pieces might be to go off and start monitoring their thoughts, catching their thoughts. Every time that you have an emotion that's above a 5 out of 10, I want you to actually record down what thought it was. People have varying degrees of insight into what their thoughts are, and it might take a little while for some people to get attuned to them. That's really, really natural. But for other people, they're quite aware of what the thoughts are. Once we've gotten to that stage where it's quite clear that people can identify this situation causes this thought, causes this feeling, then we might go into something called cognitive challenging, which is actually shifting the thought or restructuring the thought. That's a really kind of core part of cognitive behavioural therapy. It's one of the first things that I'll talk to clients about. I hope it helped. I hope you're able to maybe be a bit more aware when you're walking down the street or in day-to-day life, knowing that it's not situation that causes the feeling, it's our interpretation of the situation that causes the feeling. And so understanding our thoughts better gives us a much better idea of what to tackle. Sometimes it is that we need to change our situation, but sometimes it's that we need to change our thoughts. Please do share if you found this helpful. If so, please leave me a like and subscribe for more of these. I'm going to try and pick the kind of core concepts that I've personally found really helpful when learning about therapeutic techniques and to deliver them in these kind of short, hopefully slightly easy to understand ways. And I hope we can create the kind of comment section where people can be, reflective and vulnerable, and it's a safe space that's non-judgmental. However, if anyone is feeling distressed right now, I would recommend that you reach out to a support service near you, whether it be Lifeline, whether it be Kids Helpline, to get some support right now. And there are always 24/7 helplines that are free access, or online things like Beyond Blue, Headspace Chat, Lifeline Chat. Being able to identify the source of our distress is amazing. Having that insight is great. However, sometimes there's a lot going on. So don't be afraid to reach out for help. I really encourage everyone to seek the support that they need. I hope you guys got something out of the video, and I will see you very shortly. Okay, bye.